Good evening. And tonight I'm going to do a message about loving your enemies. And I want to start with telling you a little story. When I was in the 6th grade, I was bullied. I was what you would call a quadruple threat, or target actually. And that, first of all, I was an introvert. I still am. I was very shy. I was overweight, which I still am. And I was a nerd. I preferred reading a good book to going outside, and I actually still do. This set me up to be bullied constantly. Not only by the boys in my class, but the girls as well. They taunted me, they teased me, they'd make fun of me. There was even one of them that I would be walking down the hall and he'd be walking up towards me, who would constantly punch me in the left arm. And it went that way for the full year. Now, after I left the 6th grade, it pretty much stopped, as most of those who bullied me went to another school. So 3 decades later, I'm sitting in the doctor's office waiting on getting a checkup when one of those people who bullied me all those years earlier messaged me. And he told me he'd seen pictures of my family and myself, and it took him back to when we were in school together. And he told me this. He said, "I was not a nice person back then, and I did not treat you nicely. I had a lot going on in my life back then, but I shouldn't have taken it out on you. I'm sorry." Now, I want to tell you this much. This is the only person of that group of people that ever apologized for their actions. I sat there with my phone in my hands thinking, how am I going to respond to this? And instantly 2 Bible verses came to pass in my mind. Matthew 5:43 and 44. Matthew 5:43 is both these are where Jesus is preaching in the Sermon on the Mount. And he says this, "You've heard it said that you should love your neighbor and hate your enemy." That's 5:43. He was telling us what the expectations were of the world. Now, if I was a Matthew 5:43 person, I'd tell him where to put his apology, right? I would basically be furiously typing and angry and everything else because you're supposed to hate your enemy. But Jesus says something else. In 5:44, he changes the whole perspective of his speech, and he says this, "I say unto you," which is a command, "to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." The word love in 5:43 and 44 is exactly the same in Greek, agape. And agape means to love dearly. Jesus was telling people that they needed to love everyone, regardless of whether or not they were neighbors or enemies. In the case of those who are enemies, those who've done wrong to us, it shows benevolence towards them, as God shows us. It doesn't mean that we agree that what they did was right or wrong, but that we forgive them for their actions. By God's grace, we are forgiven of all we have done wrong, so in turn, we must forgive others. It is through our forgiveness that we can show others what Christ has done in our lives. Now, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had a sermon called "Love Your Enemies," and he said this about Matthew 5:44. "Many persons have argued that this is an extremely difficult command. Far from being the pious injunction of a utopian dreamer," he added, "this command is an absolute necessity for the survival of our civilization. Yes, it is love that will save our world and our civilization, love even for enemies." He then added this, "Now let me hasten to say that Jesus was very serious when he gave this command. He wasn't playing. He realized it's hard to love your enemies. He realized it's difficult to love those persons who seek to defeat you, those persons who say evil things about you. He realized that it was painfully hard, even pressingly hard." Loving your enemies, folks, is not easy to do. It's difficult to do because this world wants nothing more than to squash your enemies and show complete hatred towards them. However, we have a God who loves us in spite of our flaws and constantly shows his grace and mercy to those who seek him. Because God shows that to us, we must show that same love and mercy to everyone we meet. It is through that grace and love that we can truly be better people for Christ and for the world. Now, going back to the doctor's office, I finally realized what he had to write. I said, "Thank you for the kind words. I forgave you a long time ago. God bless you and your family." You know, the amazing thing about this story as we've talked several times after this. He even came to me when he was having a crisis of faith because he saw what I had done. You know, he since has gotten married. He has 3 great kids, even going back to church, which is awesome. And I look at that person now and I smile, knowing that God showed favor and a blessing because God forgives all those that go against him. Even those who bully a 6th grader because he was simply different than everybody else. See, that little message to me in a doctor's office one morning shows the power of forgiveness and the power of loving your enemies. God realized that person needed to see what forgiveness looks like at the human level, and that I needed to realize the importance of loving those who have gone against me. Perhaps we need to show others what it means to love those who have done us wrong. Take the time this week to forgive those who have done things against you, for it's what God would want you to do. Show love to everyone you meet, just as God shows you love on a daily basis. Peace be with you.